Hello, I am Umbrenero and welcome back to Umbrenero's Life. Today's video is part 2 of my 4 seasons of paintings, Spring. So this is the second part of this little mini series of paintings that I am doing, and this one is Spring. So last time was winter and was working out a few kinks here and there, and figuring out some of the colors that I knew I was going to need here in this part. But now we're on to spring, where things start getting a little bit brighter. And like last time, I started right away with the sidewalk. And I wanted to work on a little sign that is on my reference photo that I'm using, that I did not fully imitate. I put my own little twist on it, just like I did with this bridge that I am putting in here. So I am not the best on actual photorealistic landscapes. I like doing my own little twist on the paintings that I do. So that is exactly what I did here. Is I tried to make this look like a bridge, but make it look like it had its own style. And, once more of the details got put in, it started to feel like an actual bridge. But in the meantime, I threw in a couple rocks and did a little bit more detail on the little signpost there. And right here, the bridge does look like a big gray blob, but I can say it does start looking better later on. And especially with the next part, it'll really start to look like a bridge, so trust the process. But I wanted to go in and start putting in some of the trees and little thin wooded areas of this painting, because this part there is not as much, but there is still enough. And you can see my little sketch in the background there. I don't have these little brown blobs that I am painting in. I was thinking, and I'm like, in the spring, the path up to this bridge, really, it used to be a lot of little muddy patches because snow melted, it's wet. So I did like a little mud path that people have walked, and people stop and look at the sign too. But in the spring, you do have your bright colors, especially for grass, for the new grass that is growing. And I really went with a brighter green that still had somewhat of that little earthy tone that I had from the grass that was covered in the snow in the previous season. So I started filling in my little areas that were not shadowed. And a lot of those shadows actually were branches and I think a few clouds from the day that I took the reference photo. So, I'm making it work, and with a bright green grass, you're going to have a little bit darker spots, especially where the shadows are. And, this turned out pretty good. So I had to keep stopping and looking at my reference and going, all right, was this the light area or was this the light area? Because the way I had this sketched onto my canvas was starting to confuse me, because there are spots that when looking at, you could easily get confused, especially because I did throw in the little mud path. That's what really threw me off in some of these little areas. But I eventually did figure out what was supposed to be the bright grass and what was supposed to be the shadowed grass. So right by my sign here, I realized I made some of the leg posts a little bit too thick for it. So I did try to use the green to help narrow them down and actually make them fit a little bit better. You know, I'm not always perfect. I don't want to be perfect. And if I can fix things while I'm going through with a different color, I will try to do so. But I kept going with all of this bright green, and as it was drying, it did get a little darker and not as bright. So it worked just how I was hoping, and it actually fit in very well. But with all the bright green done, I had to start coming in with my darker green for the shadows. And when I was putting it down, they looked very similar in color when the one was wet. Luckily, once it started drying, you could tell the difference, and that's what I needed. So when I was putting in this darker green, I was also using this to make sure I had the light green in the correct spots, because like I said earlier, those pencil markings were getting very confusing, and I was hoping I had things in the correct spots. But since I have my own style of painting that I do, you look at this grass here and you can see there's spots that are lighter than others of the bright green and darker. I actually like that because then it gives the painting its own personality and its own feels to make it unique to what it is. But since I had all of the grass done, I had to start filling in the river in the background. And for the springtime of year, the river is a little darker. Well, yeah, it's a bit more dark. And the one thing you don't see me doing here is I was mixing my color while I was painting, because I was trying to think, all right, I know what I had for winter. I need it to be not as similar to it, because that was icy water. So I was going through and I thought I wanted the darker, but it's like, well, actually it's not as dark as it could be. It's kind of lighter because it is higher water. So I did a more of a blue-gray color for the river, but I did have dark paint mixed in that I did not fully incorporate into the color I was using. So there are spots right where darker spots will come up, because hey, that happens in water, is you have those dark spots, you have the light spots. It is what it is. And for the second part of this little mini series, I think this painting actually turned out pretty good. The only last thing I had to add was a fence that is up on the right side of the bridge. So quickly threw that in, and I didn't do it fully to detail because I wanted it to have its own feel. And off for part 2. This isn't so bad, but parts 3 and 4 will be coming out next month, and hopefully you will see them then. So thanks for watching, and until then, I am Umbrenero. Bye!